MTG Munster, your place for Commander games every Monday and Thursday. Goblin approved.
Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCGPLAYER. And if you'd like to join the generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Hey gang, looking to get your hands on a free box of Theros Beyond Death? Well, look no further. Flipside Gaming will be giving one away between December 12th and January 27th. You can enter by using my promo code MTGMudsta on an order of $10 or more, or by sending a self-addressed, stamped envelope or postcard to them. It's one entry per person, and for more information, follow the link below. We've got another Merry Melee headed your way, and this game was filmed by people at Platinum Star Games. First up, Devan has brought his Ramos deck, keeping a Selesnya Guildgate, 2 forests, an island, cultivate, Spelltithe Enforcer, and Patron of the Nezumi. Victor is back playing his Grand Warlord Radha, keeping a mountain, 2 forests, Regal Force, cultivate, Sakur Tribe Elder, and Siege Gang Commander. John is playing his Jodah deck, keeping Zakama, Bajuka Bog, Steam Vents, Necromancy, Oracle of Moldiah, and Scalding Tarn. Steve is taking out his tried and true Muldrotha deck, keeping a Command Tower, a Lotus Petal, Watery Grave, High Market, Plaguecrafter, Burnished Heart, and Yavimaya Elder. John wins the die roll and starts us off. John plays a Taiga and passes to Steve. Steve plays a Command Tower and passes. Victor plays a Forest, passing to Devan. Devan plays a tapped Selesnya Guildgate and passes to John. John plays a tapped Steam Vents. Steve plays a Forest and passes. Victor plays a Mountain and brings out Sakur Tribe Elder. Devan plays a Forest. John plays and cracks his Scalding Tarn, losing 1 to go and find a land while passing turn. Steve plays a High Market and casts his Yavimaya Elder. Victor plays a Forest and cultivates, passing. In what seems like deja vu, Devan plays a Forest and also casts Cultivate and passes. John plays a Scrubland in his main phase and taps out for Jodah. Steve plays Watery Grave, taking 2 to have it come in untapped, and pays 2 mana to activate his Elder. He draws, and then finds 2 basics for his hand. Steve then discards down to 7. Victor plays a Mountain, and brings in Grand Warlord Radha in his main phase. He heads to combat, and swings his 2 creatures at Devan, making 2 red mana with them as they swing. They connect, and in Victor's second main phase, he casts a Tauren Mauler before passing to Devan. Devan plays a Command Tower as his land drop, and pays enough for a Spelltithe Enforcer. This gives the Mauler a +1/+1 counter, and Devan then passes. John plays a Blood Crypt, losing 2 life to have it come in untapped, and activates Jodah's ability to cast Sakama for only 1 of each color instead of its normal cost. John unfortunately can't pay the 1 for the Enforcer trigger though, and he's forced to sacrifice a land. He then untaps his lands from Zakama's uncast trigger, and once the dinosaur enters, pays 3 mana to deal 3 damage to the Enforcer with Zakama and take it out. He then heads to combat, and he hits Steve with Jodah. Steve casts a Plaguecrafter in his main phase, and most of the table loses a creature to its sacrifice trigger. He then plays out a Hedron Crab as Victor continues to uptick his Mauler, and Steve then plays an Island. This gives him a Hedron Crab trigger, and he mills John with the trigger. Victor plays a Forest, and pays 5 for a Siege Gang Commander, gaining some Goblin friends as it enters. Moving to combat, he swings the now 6/6 Mauler at Steve, and Radha at Devan, gaining 2 more mana as they swing. Steve blocks with a Crab, and Devan takes the hit. In his second main phase, Victor doesn't use the mana though, and he passes turn. Devan plays a Forest and casts Explosive Vegetation to find more basics. He grabs a Plains and a Mountain and puts them to the field tapped. John plays a Bojuka Boggs as land drop, exiling Steve's Yard, which is probably the right move when playing against a graveyard-based commander. He then hits Steve with Zakama and passes. Steve's turn has him playing a forest, and he plays out a Spore Frog and then an Elephant Grass. He also casts a Lotus Petal. Steve's not done though, as he taps 3 more mana for Pernicious Deed and passes. Victor puts the counters on his Mauler before playing a Mountain for a turn, and then taps out for a Regal Force in his main phase, drawing 2 cards as it enters. He then heads to combat, swinging Radha at Devan, and the now 11/11 Mauler at John. He also decides to swing 3 Goblins at Devan as well. He gains 5 mana that's either red or green of his choice, and the creatures then connect. In his second main phase, he's got that 5 floating mana that's either red or green, and he uses it for Mycoloth. The Mycoloth comes in, devouring the 3 goblins, and giving the fungus 6+1/+1 counters. Devan's turn is over quite quickly as he plays an Nephali Academy and passes to John. John plays an Exotic Orchard and passes. Steve lets his Elephant Grass go to the yard on his upkeep, and he plays a Swamp for turn. He sacrifices his Lotus Petal and activates the Deed, putting 7 into the X to wipe away most of the board except for Zakama. Steve still has 1 floating black mana left though, and he casts a Viscera Seer before passing turn. Victor plays a forest and recasts Radha. He goes to combat, hitting Devan again and gaining 1 red mana, which he doesn't use, and instead passes turn. Devan plays a tapped Maze's End and pays a great deal of mana for Gisela. At the end of turn, this lets John use Zakama to deal 6 damage to Radha, and then the Viscera Seer after he activates it a second time. Steve responds to the target by sacrificing the Seer to scry 1 and keeps it on top. John plays a forest on his turn and swings Zakama at Steve, who can't do anything but take the hit. John then drops Soldred, and he passes turn. Steve brings in Muldrotha in his main phase, and he recasts the Spore Frog from his yard and passes turn. Victor has enough mana in his main phase for Molten Primordial, who comes in and steals a creature from each of his opponents, and also gives them haste until end of turn. He takes Gisela, Zakama, and Muldrotha. Moving to combat, he's got enough to take 1 player out, and he decides that John is the biggest threat, with Devan as a close second. He swings enough to take John out, and hits Devan with his own Gisela, dealing 10. Victor then passes turn. Devan plays out Ramos in his main phase, and then pays 5 mana for Painful Quandary, giving Ramos a +1/+1 counter from casting the spell. Devan then passes. Steve pays 3 in his main phase for Buried Alive, and goes to find up to 3 creatures to bin. Devan quickly reminds him about the Painful Quandary, and not wanting to take 10, Steve discards Disallow. Steve then grabs Kakusho, Noxious Gearhulk, and a sweet-looking box-topper version of Lord of Extinction. With nothing else, he passes. Victor draws for turn and plays a tapped Timber Gorge. He plays a Guardian Project and then a Reclamation Sage. With Devan warning Victor, he still needs to take 10 per spell or discard a card. Not wanting to lose any of his cards in hand, Victor takes the full 20, and as the Rec Sage comes in, draws him a card and blows up the Painful Quandary. Moving to combat, the Molten Primordial heads at Steve, who sacrifices his Spore Frog to fog the combat. Devan casts Cloud Cover in his main phase, giving Ramos 2 more +1/+1 counters. And then a Karmic Justice and a Michiko Konda, giving Ramos a +1/+1 counter for each of the spells that he just cast. Heading to combat, Ramos is big enough to take Steve out thanks to Gisela doubling the damage, and Devan then removes the counter from Ramos in his second main phase to cast Patron on the Nezumi. He then passes to Victor. Victor casts Helm of the Host in his main phase, sticking it onto the Primordial. He makes a token copy of the Primordial as he heads to combat, and he gets to steal another creature until end of turn from Devan. Victor targets Gisela, which lets Devan return her to hand thanks to the Cloud Cover. At least with the damage reduction gone, this opens the way for Victor to swing his 2 Primordials. Devan blocks the original with his patron and takes 6. With the damage being dealt, this triggers Michiko Kanda, and it forces Victor to sacrifice a permanent, which he decides to do by saying goodbye to Rek'Sage. Devan draws for turn and recasts Gisela, and then Into the Wilds, which has Ramos gaining a total of 3 +1/+1 counters. He then heads to combat and goes at Victor, which I say as if he has another target, and deals 12 flying damage, and passes. Victor draws and plays out Warstorm Surge. He then taps 3 mana for Fumiko the Lowblood, and draws from his Guardian Project trigger. He also gets a Warstorm Surge trigger, which although it would normally do 3, is halved because of Gisela rounded up, and only deals 2. He puts the damage on Michiko, which Devan returns to hand. Victor unfortunately forgets at this point that Gisela has first strike, and he swings his Primordial needlessly into Gisela. Devan draws for turn, and needs only move to combat and swing Ramos at Victor to take him out with a lethal amount of commander damage. Victor, knowing when he's beat, extends the hand. You know, only one of these commanders is what I would traditionally call an aggro deck, so it was very interesting to see that this game very quickly devolved into a beat-em-up game. I think that's why Gisela is probably my favorite Boros card, because as soon as it resolves, despite the fact that she costs so much mana, the game can radically change the direction it's taking. She was certainly an interesting fit for the Ramos deck, and Devan did a pretty good job of using his commander both as a mana generator and as a beatdown commander. In a similar fashion, Grand Warlord Radha was built specifically for that, and Victor was able to abuse her mana generating abilities on a few of his turns. I'm sure some people are going to say that the damage he took from Painful Quandary was unnecessary, but in the long run it really didn't seem to matter. I do think taking John out at that time was the right move, because Shoulder was going to mess everything up on everyone's upkeeps. Which, when you add to the fact that Zakama loves the fact that Gisela is on the field, at least when it comes to Victor and Steve's creatures, and you could see how John was setting himself up nicely for some future turns. I think unfortunately for Steve, he played the World Police with the Pernicious Deed, and it didn't make him any friends after he wiped the board except for the Zakama. A Spore Frog and a Muldrotha deck is a fantastic way to fog combat steps, but as I mentioned earlier, since so many people were planning on beating each other down, only being able to activate it in 1 out of 3 combat steps will make for a very painful game. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.